This episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast is proudly brought to you by Lifetime Decoys. Lifetime Decoys has set the new standard in decoy rigging equipment. Their signature, patent-pending designs use PVC-coated steel cable to prevent rust and corrosion, allow virtually zero line memory, while providing UV resistance and incredible strength and durability. Unlike monofilament, steel cable won't coil up and tangle with other lines because of excessive line memory. Their swivels and clips are made of high-quality stainless steel, and their aluminum ferrules are hydraulically pressed, providing unsurpassed strength. These materials combine to form the strongest, longest-lasting, and most tangle-proof decoy rigging equipment on the market today. They're also the only manufacturer who offers a warranty of 3 years as well as a money-back satisfaction guarantee. Check out Lifetime Decoys today at lifetimedecoys.com. You are listening to the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, episode 82. This week on the show, we're joined by Ben Webster of Big Kansas Outdoors. We're talking guide life and how to get you best prepared for your next guided experience. All right, welcome to the 82nd episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. We're your on-demand audio source for all things waterfowl and waterfowl hunting. You can check us out at hpoutdoors.com, across all the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, all the places where you can find quality podcast content. Before we get too far into this week's show, I do want to thank the companies that support what we do here. Gunner Kennels. Gunner Kennels are engineered for your dog, designed for travel, and built for your peace of mind. The G1 Kennel has a set of new industry standard and put the Gunner Kennels in a category all its own. Gunner Kennels was started to protect your pet, and it continues to be at the center of everything that they do. Gunner Kennels are dedicated to building the best and safest pet travel crate on the market. Man's best friend deserves man's best kennel. Check out their G1 series of kennels and accessories at www.gunnerkennels.com. We would also like to thank Adrenaline and the Finisher. Bird hunting made quick, clean, and humane. Adrenaline has invented a remarkable alternative to the out-of-date and inhumane techniques that can damage or destroy your trophy bird. The Finisher is a patented device that has been successfully tested in the field for years and continues to hold true to its name. The Finisher method will kill any bird instantly using a small amount of pressure where the back of the neck and the base of the skull meet. At the size of a quarter, it can easily be worn on your lanyard, vest, jacket, or any other hunting gear. Don't miss out on that great product. It truly has revolutionized my hunting experience. I use this product all the time in the field, and I cannot speak highly enough of it. We would also like to thank Big Al Silhouette Decoys, proudly made here in the USA, Southern Oak Kennels, and Camp Chef for their support of this show. Again, we cannot stress it enough. Please support the companies that support what we do here at this show. Whew, that was a mouthful. All right, Dan, what do you say this week?
Dude, today is Kimber's birthday, 9 years old. I can't believe it. I started a post on Facebook today asking when people kind of retire their dogs or start seeing them slow down. And, you know, a lot of people were in that 9 to 11 range mostly, I guess. And it's kind of just sad to think about, man. I don't think I'm ready for that day. So, you know, 9 years old, she's been a great girl, and you know, it is what it is. So we took her out for ice cream, a little doggy treat in the ice cream, and the kids loved it. So it was a good evening, and you know, looking forward to the convo tonight. And you know, we have Ben on tonight, and one of the sponsors tonight was Gunner Kennels, and I saw that for one of his dogs, he just opened one up today. So you know, we can have him talk to their product a little bit too as well.
Yeah, I thought that would be a good intro. And again, before we move on, happy birthday to Kimber. I want to put that out there. But yeah, I saw recently Ben had made a post on his social media about his dog and vet bills and all the glorious stuff that comes with it. So maybe we can kick it off a little bit with that. Ben, what's up, man? How you doing?
Great, guys. How are you?
We're great. And how's the pup doing? Everybody doing all right?
If anybody knows Otis, he's an extremely hard-charging dog. And yesterday, before we even started training, he ran right through a fallen tree. Well, the tree stopped him in his tracks. Usually he jumps over them, but got some bark or tree in his eye. Had to have kind of a mini surgery. They put him under, pulled it out. Doctor thinks it didn't puncture all the way through his cornea, so should make a full recovery, but no training for a few weeks, eye drops, anti-inflammatories, pain meds, the whole 9 yards. So as far as using the gunner kennel, haven't really got to yet, but definitely put it together. Fantastically well, very well built. Excited to get to use it this fall.
You know, I, for one, can relate to the vet bill situation. I have a 90-pound golden retriever that won't retrieve a duck to save his life, but he can definitely get ear infections with the best of them. And ear infections and allergies and stuff have us at the vet all the time. So I feel the pain, man, for sure. But, you know, this episode for me is going to be one that I think a lot of guys are really going to be interested to hear what you have to say. And, you know, we talked a little bit about this before we got going, but going on a guided hunt is such a, you know, it's an exciting time. It's a terrifying time as a client. You know, there's a lot of things in motion and a lot of things to prepare for, and you look forward to it for so long, and then, you know, before you know it, it's like here and it's gone, and there's a lot going on with it. So part of the reason why we wanted to have you on is to talk a little bit about that experience from both the guide side and the hunter side, and try to take the mystery out of, you know, how to have a great hunt and what you should expect from your guide and what your guide is going to expect from you as a client, so that when the time comes, you're the best prepared to have as good of hunt as possible. Because as we all know, it's called hunting, obviously, and there's going to be things that may impact bird flight and all of these things. So, you know, there's going to be certain things out of your control. But when you're putting money and travel and time away from work and all of these things to a guided hunt, you know, as a client, you need to take care of what you can control and put yourself in the best possible position to have a great hunt. So we're going to hit on some of that stuff here today. And hopefully that'll be something that a lot of guys can take away from this. But I wanted to kind of start first off talking a little bit about just being a waterfowl guide and kind of what goes into that. And I think a lot of guys have just this vision in their mind that, oh man, you have a job that has to do with waterfowl hunting and you spend so much time in the field and it's got to be amazing. And it's all this glamour and all this great stuff. And I think guys recognize that there's a lot of time that goes into it. I'm not sure they recognize how much time it goes into it. So maybe take us through, to kind of start off here, take us through like a normal day for you in, you know, during duck season when you got, you know, clients coming in and stuff. Kind of what does a normal day sort of tend to look like for you as the guy in charge?
A normal day for me, you know, everyone gets up depending on if they're guiding or if they're scouting, or, you know, helping set up. Some guys are up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. A lot of the guys that are scouting, depending, you know, we scout such a wide area. You know, some guys are going up to an hour drive just to get to the roost that they're going to scout, blah, blah, blah. So there's a little, you know, some guys are sleeping a little bit. Some guys are, you know, nonstop getting up at 3, 4 in the morning if you're a, you know, a full share guide. So then you hunt or scout all day. Typically you go back, clean birds, or go eat lunch with the client. The unique thing about my operation compared to some of the others in the Midwest, we only waterfowl hunt once a day. So all the guides get a little bit of a nap and they go scout in the afternoon. And then my upland guide takes over the clients for the afternoon. He guides them all afternoon, you know, and then does the bird cleaning afterwards while everybody else is scouting. And I'm on the phone all night long, basically, you know, talking to guys. What are you seeing? You know, where are birds? Are there birds here? You know, are they comfortable? what's going on, did you get permission? And basically I just formulate it all down on paper or in my head and, figure out a game plan for tomorrow, the best plan of attack, look at the weather, always looking at the weather, playing the weather, to the best we can. So, can be pretty hectic, but with not guiding waterfowl both morning and night, there's a little bit of a break midday, which is, very needed.
So you get a small nap during the day, but what time do you guys end up going to bed? Because 3 a.m. that's a pretty early wake up call to do, day in and day out.
Yeah, I mean, it really just depends on, how far away you were scouting, or there's always those situations where we have no wind in the morning and we have a better wind in the afternoon. So we'll actually upland hunt in the morning, waterfowl hunt in the afternoon, which puts you out later, and then if you're an hour and a half away, you could have an hour and a half drive home, unload, do the whole thing. Typically I try to be in bed by, 10 o'clock, but there are those late nights, here or there. So
I mentioned it before, but I've spent 2 summers out in Kansas, so I know that, an hour drive, it's not the windy type roads that we're used to here in Pennsylvania or, West Virginia where I went to college. It's usually a lot of straight roads. You go northeast, southwest, and, north on South Street and east on West Street. There's some fun things there in Wichita that I had to get used to, but especially the directions as far as that's concerned. But yeah, there's a lot of open country out there. But I guess we can get right back. What do you expect from hunters that show up to camp like day one? What are you expecting them to do as far as getting ready, or do you usually have guys come in the night before? Do you meet them or do you meet them the morning of and say, follow me to the field, we're going right in it, or how do you usually set that up?
Typically we try to meet them the night before. They always come into camp. If they get there early enough, they can have dinner, relax. They got to make sure they get, all their licensing, which, I tell them multiple times, you got to get this, this, and this. And in the morning we double check it, sign the waivers and whatnot. Typically they just hang out for the evening, wait for me to give them a call, to let them know the game plan. We don't take our client to the field. Typically we drop them a pin, or they can follow us if they want to help set up and meet us at the field. And then usually we'll shuttle them in the field.
So if I'm a guy that's coming into your camp and, I want to have the best experience possible, what are, 1 or 2 things that you would say, absolutely do this, this will help best achieve that? And then what are 1 or 2 things where you'll say, absolutely don't do this? Because I've seen it time and time again where guys do this and then they end up having a bad experience, for whatever reason. You got a couple things kind of on both sides of that coin?
Yeah. The number one biggest thing I would think is listen. A lot of times your guide's going to want you to do a certain thing, a certain way, just for safety precautions. He's going to run through a safety, whether it be as soon as you're done shooting, guns up. Everybody have the guns in there, and then we'll tell you to reload them. That way, if there's people picking up birds or dogs, everyone's safe. Your gun's straight up in the air. Typically, there's not going to be any issues. The other thing that I think actually, some people don't think it affects the hunt, but I do, is look at the moon phase when you're booking a hunt. A lot of people completely forget about that, but out in Kansas, if you have a full moon, a lot of times your ducks are going to be nocturnal. It doesn't really affect the geese as much, but if you're a duck guy, I think playing the full moon when booking a hunt should be, one of your top priorities.
I'm just thinking about things that you expect out of your clients, and one thing that comes to mind would be calling. Do you allow people to call in in your blinds, or they kind of, do you let your guides take care of that? Have you ever had anyone that calls and just sounds horrible and kind of ruins the hunt, and you have to tell them to put the call away, or how do you go about that?
Man, that's always a hard one to deal with, because some guys just enjoy calling and they can't. And that's, as a guide, you want to keep your guys as happy as possible. You want them to have an enjoyable experience, because the guide's also working for a tip. And so you don't want to piss anyone off. So it's always kind of one of those deals where you just got to feel them out. If their sole group, so us, if you have 6 guys, you have your own group. If it's their sole group and they're, the group's okay with it, then we'll allow them to call. If we think it's affecting the hunt, I myself, I can't say for the rest of my guides, but I myself will say, hey, let us do the calling this time. Let's see if this goes over better. Try to smooth it over as softly as possible, But typically, guys don't call. My guides are some of the best, I think, in the Midwest, and they're very highly capable of getting it done by themselves. So,
yeah, I have to say, every time I've gone hunting with a guide, someone who spends, 60 days a year in the field on the call, I like to call when I hunt, but when I go with a guide, I don't even think about picking up my calls, because I literally just listen to how they're working calls and I watch birds. So it's a really good opportunity to just learn. Even if you're a polished and a skilled caller, watching a guide who does it day in and day out and how the birds are responding to what he's doing and trying to learn tips and techniques from that is incredibly valuable. I've had times during slow periods of the morning flight where I'll pick the guide's brain and I'll be like, hey man, I heard you doing this. Like, tell me, tell me about that. Or, how do you tune your call? Like, can I take a look at it? Just kind of get as much information as you can, because it's just a rare opportunity where you get to spend some time with somebody that's doing that kind of stuff every day. And it's just a wealth of knowledge. So do you find guys are looking to try to learn from your guides, or do you think it's like more of a, they're there just cutting up with their buddies, or like, is there kind of a mix of both? Like, what do you typically see? Do you see guys that are there to hunt and want to help set up decoys and all this kind of stuff? Or are they more like, y'all set it up, I'm going to sit in the warm truck till it's time to shoot, and then I'll come get in the blind?
It's a little bit of everything. You get the high rank that are more there to hang out with their buddies, get away from the wife, have some cold drink, do some shooting, and just have a good time. Then you got, the guys that hunt all the time. They want to help. That's fine. That's great. They ask questions, and I think that's what it's all about. And then you got the guys in the middle that are just, they just want to kill birds and take a picture and, look pretty, which is not a problem. But dealing with people, it's part of the industry. So we see, a whole variety of groups of people, and we accept them all.
I have a question on the setting up, because you said you'll drop a pin first thing in the morning, or people can follow you and help set up. What kind of is the ratio to the people that want to get out there and help versus the people that just want to show up and shoot? They want to sleep in. Maybe they're up drinking a little too much the night before or something like that. But what's your averages there?
Probably 75% of the guys prefer to sleep in once they know what time they would have to meet us. Which, if they're willing to help set up, it can either be a pain just because they're kind of helter-skelter, or it can be fantastic, because that means we get to sleep in a little bit more because there's more boots on the ground doing what needs to be done. We typically like to set up ourselves just so we know everything's done 100%. And then, of course, everyone usually helps tear down, which is fantastic. We have, no problem with anybody that wants to help set up, and, just as long as they listen and, do it the way we want it done and not how they're, used to hunting, because it's definitely a different style out here in the Midwest.
I guess what kind of spread setup are you looking at? How many decoys do you usually run?
It depends on how we're hunting. We have, two different methods for the most part. We're very versatile. When we hunt out in the middle, typically we're setting a really big sock spread, usually around 100 to 150 dozen socks and silhouettes, which does take time to set up. But numbers, we hunt all littles and specs, so numbers are huge. When we hunt from the edge, we try to hunt with at least 30 dozen. Average is probably 50 dozen full bodies. Either A-frame setup or, layouts from the edge.
Good gracious.
I was going to say, I usually don't see 50 dozen geese in a flock around here, or even set up anywhere like that. Those are 100 dozen. There's definitely not that many. But go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions, but I before we get too far down the rabbit hole on some of these other things, I wanted to jump back really quickly because you touched on something that we get asked all the time. I mean, this is probably a top 5 question that we get from guys, and it has to do with tipping their guide. And, obviously everybody kind of wants to do the right thing here, right? At least I would hope. And most of the guys that ask us are that way. They want to know what's fair, and they don't want to shortchange somebody that's working their tail off. But people don't really know what that number is. If you go to a restaurant, is it 20% or whatever? So I think that's one of the most intimidating factors of a guided hunt for someone that may be new to it is, man, what am I supposed to tip the guy so he doesn't think that I'm a complete jerk? Do you have any guidance for those guys out there that might have questions about tipping?
Yeah, it's completely up to the person. I would say probably on average, we're looking at 10 to 15%. But it's also going to be how you feel, and not just based on you like the guy or you didn't like the guy. It should be, did he do his job? Did he do a good job for the, circumstances? You can't base it 100% off the personal feel, the personality is what I should say. Mm-hmm. Granted, if you ever wanted to be a guide, having a personality helps you immensely in the tip department. You got to be able to talk to people to be a guide. So in saying that, I guess it is based off the whole experience,
Right.
So
yeah, I think that could be tough, because you could get some guys that, don't hunt a lot, and maybe once a year that they go out and, they go out to your outfit and then they see, they might not be killing birds, and they end up with, 10 or 15 birds on the ground when the guide was, blowing his head off and just, putting birds in their lap all day, and they couldn't shoot. So when they look at the final product, they're like, oh, we didn't have a very good hunt when we show our buddies these pictures, but that guide was, working his tail off. So, I think you need to make sure on that end, if that guy's putting the work in, he deserves that 15-20%, and I don't think you guys should have an issue with that. On the other hand, we had Ramsey Russell on not too long ago, and he started the episode out talking about a guide up in Canada that, showed up late and drunk, and I think if that was the case and you didn't kill any birds and didn't see any, then you'd be in a different situation. But definitely the guys that are out there working and out at 3:00 putting a huge spread out like that, I think guys, people should know that, it's definitely worth tipping them.
Yep. And one thing, clients, I think sometimes forget, you kind of touched on it as far as, maybe they didn't have a big pile to take a picture of. But one thing I think people forget about is if you're pulling the trigger, most likely the guide's doing his job. He can't control whether you can shoot or not. But that being said, if he's calling shots at 80 to 100 yards and that's closer to get him, then that's, a different standard. But, you can never tip too much. Let's be honest. As as a guide, the bigger tippers are definitely the guys are going to be that they're going to remember. But I would say, a good tip is 10%. Anything more than that is a really good tip, and will be very, my guys will be very grateful for it.
Yeah, and I think, I again, there are exceptions to every rule, but I think that, when you got an outfit that's successful, right? And this kind of gets cut down to a little bit of, we did an episode I guess several years ago now, Dan, we could say we did this, but we talked about, how you evaluate outfitters as you're trying to figure out who you want to go with and all this kind of stuff. And, price is always such a big thing, and people, zero in on that number, and rightly so. I mean, it's a lot of hard-earned money that people put into this stuff, but to some extent you have to look at, you get what you pay for, because operations that are successful, that stick around and get a ton of repeat clients, they're working their tail off and doing it the right way. And you can probably go online and find a horror story from somebody's optic about almost everything, right? Everybody's had a problem with this gear, or someone's had a problem with that gun, so it's tough to sort of please everybody all the time. But I like to think that, the guys that I've been around, I don't tip on the fact of whether I pulled the trigger or not. I tip on, do I feel like that guy put forth the effort that I would expect to see to try to get me on birds and have an enjoyable hunt. There's things that he can't control and all of these sort of things, but at the end of the day, did I feel like the best effort that could have been put forth possible was? And that's what it's about. It's about effort and about just, that experience. And I'm curious as to if you ever get feedback from your clients where they say something and you're just like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Like, because everyone's optics a little bit different about what they're feeling internally in the blind, whether it's, I can imagine that there's probably been a time when someone's shot their limit of birds and still complained about something, right? I'm sure there's times when people don't shoot their birds and they complain about something. So I'm curious if you've ever got these sort of off the wall complaints where it's like, wow, where did that come from? That's like a left field, thing that I wasn't even thinking about. And here this guy's, rubbed wrong about it.
Yeah, it's, there's always something when you're working with people. It doesn't matter. You have those guys that are jerks, and you have the guys that in your mind you had a terrible hunt, but they couldn't do nothing but thank you enough,
Yeah.
I mean, off the top of my head, I've never had anything too wild, said as far as just blowing me away.
Well, and I'm sure, I think one of the things that would probably frustrate me the most as a guide, if I was in, putting myself in your shoes, is, it's no different than a lot of businesses where it's like you're out there putting the best product you can to your client. And if they don't say anything to you in the time, like, you don't know it's an issue. So maybe someone has an issue with the blind they're hunting in because they're uncomfortable or whatever. I have no doubt that if they voice that concern to you, the response would probably be something along the lines of, well, of course we can move somewhere. I can put you in a different blind, but I can't guarantee you that the birds that we, are going to be here. Like, we've scouted them here for this spot, whatever. So maybe they get a little bit of a choice there, but then they make the decision, and then they just stay there on the birds or whatever. And then they turn around and are unhappy with the blind, and they write something on Facebook or whatever. I mean, this is a completely hypothetical situation, but, to what level should someone voice a concern to you if they have it in that regard? And sort of what flexibility do you have? I mean, again, I'm not saying you and your outfit particular. I'm just sort of asking in general as the guide, and you put so much time and effort into scouting, as you talked about, how much flexibility is there? I mean, to say like, oh, I want to hunt water today. I don't really want to sit in a dry field. Well, okay. Does it come to that point where you basically have to get someone to say, if that's what you want, you have to be willing to accept the fact that you might not pull the trigger? Like, does that ever come up?
Yeah, the biggest issue we have is, like I said, we're so versatile on how we hunt, just because of how we think we can kill the birds in that field, or the best way to kill in, X field. The biggest issue we have is blind. Everybody wants to hunt out of the A-frame style blind. And there's certain situations where, it just doesn't work. And, that's one of the biggest problems I have with my somewhat of a older clientele, and I understand that 100%. And I always ask them, we're going to do our best to get you guys an A-frame if you can't, lay on the ground. I make sure, is that going to be a problem? Do you need taller, a taller chair for your knees? Would that help you? Or, whatever it may be. But there's just some situations in Kansas where you can't hunt out of an A-frame, and that's, some guys they'll rather hunt out of an A-frame and try it. And what bugs the guide is when you try it and it doesn't work, and then, they kind of make up some other excuse, and in your head, you're like, no, we should have,
Right.
I gave you my professional opinion on what we should do and what we wanted to do, and you changed that, and now, this is kind of the consequence. And, it's fine, but they just need to take a step back and, realize what actually went on in the situation.
Yeah, and that's almost something that should be addressed before they even come out. Say, I've had back surgery and I can't be in a layout blind, and that might change your perspective too. Or we tell your guides we need to hunt out of an A-frame, so let's find a field that can get a decent hunt. That needs so much communication is such a big deal. And a lot of people are afraid to say that until, you're ready to pack up and head to a field and be like, oh, are we hunting out of A-frames? Well, no, we're going to be in the middle of a 1,000-acre field here, and we're going to be laying out. Oh, I can't do that. Well, now you're in a pickle. So I think, having an open line with an outfitter is a pretty big thing. And I wanted to kind of go back, but I think on my end, going on a guided hunt or just even out of state, and I've said it before on here, but I get really freaked out about being legal. Like, the last thing I want to do is, get ticketed for not having this tag or that tag or whatever it may be. So do you tell the guys, call me before your hunt and let me run down, or just, check my website, everything's on there? Or, how do you go about making sure that everyone is legal before they show up at the field in the morning?
Typically what I do is I shoot them a text with everything they need to have. Make sure you bring your federal water stamp with you and make sure it's signed. Buy your non-resident hunting license, this is the price. Buy your state waterfowl stamp, this is the price. If in Kansas, you got to buy your HIP stamp. Here's the X price. Make sure you have everything that I just listed. And then when they get here, I run through it again and ask them. Sometimes we check them. Sometimes they want us to look at them, just to make sure and double check. And that's, 100% fine. That's, what they should do.
And I think mostly every state is online that you can buy a license and print it out if push comes to shove, or you have that receipt on your phone if needed. But that's always something that, even this main trip in January that I went up to, we went up to the store and we're asking them, well, what's an out of state or need? And, they have no idea. So, making sure that I don't know what time it was by the time we got up there. It had to be midnight and they were still open. And, that just, I don't get anxiety very often, but that's one thing that kind of freaks me out internally, is just making sure I'm legal. But I guess another question I have, we started this off by, saying happy birthday to my dog and talking about your dog running into trees, as not funny as that is. But how many people want to bring their dog with them, and do you allow that? Has it caused trouble? I know some guys that say, if I can't bring my dog, I'm not going to hunt. So how often do you run into that situation?
It's actually becoming more and more of, I call it a problem, but it's not a problem. More and more of an issue. And I don't know if it's just becoming more of a popular thing that if you're a waterfowl hunter, you have to have a dog, or, what's going on. I think it does enhance the experience to hunt with your own dog. we allow it under the circumstance that you're going to have to realize that if I think your dog is affecting the hunt for the group, I'm going to ask you to put them away. And I tell all my clients the same goes for me and my dog. If Otis, and now what's going to be Harley, will be running some next year as well. If one of my dogs is bothering you in any way, let me know. I'll go put them up. And I just think that's, just the courtesy thing to do.
Yeah, I could see that being an issue, especially if you said, if you have a group of 6, you have your own group. But if you have a couple guys and, 3 groups of 2 that show up and one group of 2 has a dog, I could see those other 4 guys being not too happy about it if that dog's, whining or breaking before the shot or anything like that. So I could see that being a pretty big issue, especially when people, some people save up all year to go on one hunt and to go out and have it, I wouldn't say ruined, but definitely not the prime time that they thought it would be. And, being a reflection on you as the owner could be a very sticky situation there.
Yep. That's one thing to always double check with the outfitter, before you come. Some guys are starting to charge for people to bring their dog. I don't really agree with that, but everybody runs their business differently. Some guys just don't even allow it. That way they have more control. And I understand both sides, but, when it comes down to it, it's really the client's hunt. Yeah, we're putting on the show, but really they paid for this day. So you're kind of, to me, I'm at their mercy for the most part. If they tell me they want to sit there and watch the birds, we're just going to sit there and watch them. That's what they paid to do. So, but that's just how I run things. I run things a little different. To me, I put so much into it, and I want, all my clients, and I want my guides, I want everybody that comes out and hunts with Big Kansas, to have just the best trip possible. That's what it's all about. And if that means you bring your dog, then bring your dog. The last thing I want to do is tell somebody to put their dog away. I've never had to do it. I think majority of people know, old Gunner, he's not the best. Better leave him at the house. But if it happens, we will.
I think that's a real come to Jesus moment for a lot of hunters, right? I mean, there's no better feeling than watching your dog retrieve a bird that you've shot. That is one thing when you're in the back 40, so to speak, and it's, whatever. It's a completely another ball game when you're traveling and potentially flying and the resources that go into it. I mean, there's a lot more at stake. So if your dog habitually breaks early, it's no big deal if it flares, a flock or 2 at your home, spot or whatever. But I think guys got to really look themselves in the mirror and say, is this something I want to be dealing with when I'm on hunt that I've paid for? And, I have the opportunity to have for a guy like me in the Atlantic Flyway, the kind of birds you all are, seeing out there, those are like hunts of a lifetime for me. So there's no way that I'm going to risk having my dog put that stuff in jeopardy when, I know that you and your staff are more than capable of handling that aspect of the hunt with your dogs and stuff. So, I just think guys would need to be real honest with themselves before they decide to think about taking their dog with them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I guess another thing I have a question on would be, I guess just yourself as a owner, and if you, I guess kind of how you regulate your guides. I assume that you know them really, really well. I don't know if you're longtime friends with them, but have you ever had issues to where you really had to snap them into shape a little bit?
There's always going to be issues, especially some quarreling between guides, just because we're all tired. We've all been together for 3 months, tired. You're around the same guys, which can be fantastic, but on the downside, everybody's a little bit annoyed at everyone. So, you got to do your best to, put guys together that, don't have a problem with each other. That's just part of people reading as an owner. The biggest issue I have is whether or not they're scouting like they're supposed to, because, every night I send everyone to their own area. Well, if X person is, repeatedly never coming back with, a spot to hunt, well, that kind of throws a red flag, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's not doing his job. So that's the biggest issue I have, is trying to do the best at holding people accountable, for doing what they're supposed to, because they're out on their own, by themselves. So it's kind of hard to do, but that's part of it.
I guess another question I have too is, we talked about this on the Facebook group, but you're sending guys an hour and a half out, and obviously I wouldn't say obviously because I don't know Kansas that well, but the whole public land issue and guides on public land, which I was corrected, and I think this is the third year coming up that guides aren't allowed on public land, but I just, I kind of enjoyed your perspective on that, and I didn't know if you wanted to talk to our listener base about your thoughts on the whole situation that went down out there.
I don't know a ton about the situation because I was always guiding and not guiding on public land. So, I didn't really know how much of it was going on. I was under the impression that a lot was happening, and I'm sure there's a lot more than I even know about. And there's two ways to look at it. There's the average hunter, the citizen, his point of view, and then there's the guide's point of view. I can see how the guide's point of view would be, well, look at it this way. I'm bringing all these guys in, they're bringing money, boosting the economy, which is in turn paying taxes, and the taxes are helping the wetlands. I get that point of view. The guide pays his taxes, hopefully, so he should be allowed rightfully to hunt the public hunting. And then I see the average hunters, I call them average, but just your typical hunter, his point of view, he may not have the resources to get out and scout, early enough, or, maybe he doesn't have the money to have the big spread, so he feels like, the guide's pushed him around, whether it's because the guide has a bigger boat and beating him to the better spot, or, just pushing him around as far as having more decoys. I see both sides. My point of view is I'm a guide. I'm making money hunting. I should be able to afford leases or day leases or whatever it may be, or purchase ground to run my clients. I shouldn't have to, live off the state as far as my operation. So I think it was, a great thing to leave it to the regular hunters and keep guides out of it. Is it still happening? I'm sure it's, kind of hard to regulate, but I don't think it was a bad thing at all.
Yeah, and I think one thing I said to you on there too was, it kind of, like you mentioned, you're paying for leases or day leases or, whatever you have to do buying land, and it kind of, it on a business end, if those guys aren't paying those fees, then, they're kind of able to maybe give a cheaper hunt and can take business away from you. So, I mean, it seemed like a pretty delicate situation on both sides, and I can kind of see both ends of it like you can. And, I just thought that was really interesting. I don't even know if many people guide on NPA here as far as I think there's some snow goose guides out on the eastern side of the state, but not so much in this area. So we don't really deal with that as much.
Yeah, you you've hit a couple things here that I think are just interesting in the whole scheme of things. And the first one being land access, right? So, most guys, and again, I know it's different in your part of the country, but a lot of guys talk about struggling to, find access to properties and all of these things, and your livelihood literally depends on it. So, how challenging is it to find landowners that are willing to talk business when it comes to this kind of stuff? Are they hesitant? What are like some common objections or sort of concerns that you get from landowners? And do they appreciate how valuable access is to you as a guide, and how important that is, to be able to continually put people on birds and having that, that portfolio of property to be able to look at and to be able to utilize when the birds are hitting them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little different for guides because, like I said about the public hunting, we have the money to pay.
Right.
And I think every guide should pay whether the landowner doesn't want the money or not. He needs to find a way to show his appreciation, and that's, show his appreciation by not only taking care of the land the best way possible, but also, giving thanks, whether it be in just a simple gift card to a restaurant or leave cash in the mailbox, whatever you got to do to show them how appreciative you are. And then it just comes down to, I think the biggest problem we have is either a guide or another hunter disrespecting them in some way, whether it not be paying them, whether it be, sinking a truck when they told them, hey, I don't want you driving the field, or making ruts or leaving trash. It all comes down to being respectful. If everyone's respectful, cleans up after themselves, if they even think there's a chance they'll make tracks, they walk in or plot in, whatever you got to do. Mm-hmm. If everybody does that, then down the road, it's going to be a lot easier for everyone to get permission. They'll see that we're all respectful, citizens, and everything will be great. You're also going to have those landowners that, have a different point of view and just don't like hunting. There's no way around that. So.
What do we've talked about, some of these things in the past, and most recently we talked about this with Ramsey Russell. But as a guy who makes his living, pursuing waterfowl and working with hunters, what do you see as a guide as some of the biggest threats to waterfowl hunting and in particularly the commercial aspect of it? People are literally paying you to come harvest birds, and obviously there's all kinds of antis and stuff like that. But, from your perspective, are you feeling things that, maybe the average guy doesn't necessarily notice because our livelihood doesn't depend on it? But I'm curious just to get your optic on what you think some of the biggest threats to waterfowl and just hunting in general in the country that you're seeing right now.
The biggest threats, probably respect is a big thing. Like I touched on earlier, you got to respect the property unless you own it. My biggest worry, and some people think I'm nuts for thinking this, but my biggest worry making my livelihood off this is some kind of disease or, kill that happens, and, they either outlaw hunting for X amount of years or they limit the amount of birds you can kill. That's my biggest fear, because then I'm, screwed for the most part.
Right.
And I hope that never happens, but, if it does, it does.
Yeah. I mean,
that's something I can't control. So.
Yeah. I think one of the things I got to thinking about here in the Atlantic Flyway, they're considering lowering the daily mallard limit to 2 instead of 4. And, for me, it's like, whatever. Okay. We've got enough variety where that wouldn't hurt me too bad, stuff like that. But, now that we're chatting and I'm just kind of listening to some of the things you're saying, I'm thinking in my mind, well, what would it mean to you as a guide if they reduce the limits of, mallards or specks or a bird that you harvest, in a fairly decent quantity, how much of an impact would that have on you and, your ability to put people on, hunts in a consistent manner?
The limit, as a guide, you want the limit to be low, but still have clients come out, because when they raised it to 6, it was probably, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. They raised our limit from 3 Canadas to 6. The hunter inside me says it's awesome. I get to kill double my limit every day. It almost isn't even going to feel right. As the guide, I was like, oh man, that's longer hunt.
Right.
Got to have bigger fields. So that, it does affect it. That's why a lot of people like going to Canada, the, more liberal limits. You can shoot 8 ducks, you can shoot 8 geese, 20 snows. I think it does affect booking. That's why a lot of people are coming to Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Nebraska now, because we can shoot 5 mallards with a bonus duck. We can shoot 6 Canadas with 2 specks, 50 snows. So we have pretty liberal limits as well. Not quite like the West Coast, where they can shoot 7 ducks, but we're very fortunate to be able to do that. And talking about that, a threat that I just thought of, and I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but I think the biggest threat is probably habitat. And I think up north, with the tiling that they're doing with the fields, which is, creating less potholes, I think that's going to slowly become a bigger issue.
Yep.
I tell you what, I thought that, Josh, you could probably speak to it a little bit more about the days, but the sea duck hunting, we had Pit Boss on here, and what did they go from like 106 days to 60, or what was that change? Do you remember?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. It was a pretty significant cut though. They shortened the season.
And I was like, man, that's half for an outfitter, that's half your clientele. So either, and half your season. So either your prices are going to double or, something's going to give there. And, it doesn't seem like I really haven't heard people complaining about it. I guess some people probably went out of business from it, I'd imagine, but that's something that's definitely, those changes and people fully invested in guiding. I mean, that could really hurt you. So, but I guess I'm still thinking, from the perspective of kind of newer guys on a guided hunt, and when they show up to the field, and I guess I'm wondering, do you probably don't know the ability of the people before they get in a blind. Maybe if they, like you said, they show up to dinner the night before, you can kind of feel them out if these guys have, know their way around the blind, or if they're pretty new. But I know when I hunt with Josh and we hunt with a group, he goes through kind of a safety talk and just a reminder of, pick out one bird, one shell at a time, go through it, shoot your lanes. Do you see a lot of guys, shooting over each other, kind of crossing lanes up? Do you have to, as a guide, do you guide them to become better hunters? Do you make that kind of a priority on your end?
Yep. So we always do a safety talk. I mentioned before, guns up, now you can load them, the whole 9 yards. And we do that every morning, whether it's your first morning or your third morning with us. We're going through the safety talk just to refresh your memory. I think a big issue with our clients is them shooting their lanes, or everyone shooting the gravy bird. And the gravy bird, I mean, there's always that one bird that's just doing it right that sticks out to everybody. And I don't know why that is. Usually, he's center punched 5 yards off the ground, perfect eye level. And, he gets blown away by 4 or 5 guys. It almost happens all the time. So I saw this today, and it makes me, I kind of do the same thing. Alex Langbo made a post, and, he said when he was guiding, he always told his client, if you're the left guy, start on the left, work your way in. If you're the right guy, start on your right, work your way in. don't always shoot those real close birds. Shoot a far bird first, and then that close bird will be in perfect range. I kind of have the same concept, to everybody shoot their lane, same thing. When we're hunting, we like land birds with lesser specs to do that typically, on the right day. So what I tell people is always shoot a bird at eye level that's getting ready to land. Stay there because birds are going to be hopping off the ground. Well, they're going to be right at eye level. And then your third shot, just whatever you can pick out. I'll have those guys that I just landed 100 birds in front of them, and I look over and they're shooting straight up in the air. It's just kind of like, oh man, you just shake your head, but
just flock shooting.
Yeah, all you can do is remind them, try to get them to slow down, take a deep breath, and, just pick a bird and shoot it.
Yeah. Well, it's easier said than done.
One bird.
Especially, it's funny because, again, Dan and I hunted the Atlantic Flyway. We don't get these big, massive knots of birds like coming over top of us, and just, we work smaller flocks in general. So I can definitely see how people, get those big knots on top of them and have trouble focusing in and just kind of lose all composure and just start flock shooting. I could absolutely see somebody getting caught up in the moment and doing that. And, that being a frustration point for you guys and for the hunters, because obviously they want to get as many birds as well. And, while we were talking here, and I know we're getting, close to the hour mark and all that kind of stuff. So, one question I did want to ask you, in the past on this show, we've talked about, we've talked a lot about bands and that kind of stuff. And, it's kind of a two-part question, for you here. One, we've heard stories of outfitters and stuff wanting to keep any bands that are shot on the hunt. They think that they belong to the outfitter or whatever. So you'll see outfitters taking banded bands off of guys that have shot them on their hunting party. So I'm curious to hear what your optic is on that. And then two, have you had any situations where guys have killed a banded bird on a hunt with you, and they've really struggled to decide whose it was going to be? And, guys are always looking for good creative ways to decide who's going to get the bird. So, I'm interested to hear if you've got any tips for, a bird where, any one of 3 or 4 different guys could have shot it. How do you decide who gets to ultimately take it?
We decide by, drawing shells, or if 2 guys think they actually shot the single, then, they can arm wrestle, or, rock, paper, scissors, whatever, you need to do. The biggest issue I think we have is, in Kansas, you can shoot with your clients. We always ask our clients, can I shoot? We don't always shoot. Sometimes we just run our dogs. But when we shoot, we shoot our birds. And to me, if there's the biggest problem with guiding is party shooting. And I think that's the biggest problem in the waterfowl industry, period. It's very, very hard to figure out who's shooting what bird. So that's a huge issue, that comes into play as a guide, because we're trying to 100% play by the rules. And if you don't know you shot the bird, then that's a problem. So we always draw for it. But if we shoot, I let my guides draw with the clients, and some clients think that's not right because they paid for it. In our mind, we were just as much a part of the hunt, as they were. We were shooting as well. There's a very good chance, it was us just as much as the next guy. So that's a fine line to play. I actually don't like talking about it because some people, if you take a band from a client, there's a chance he's not coming back, whether you shot it 100% or not.
Right.
It's just a really, really touchy subject. Every, person has their own opinion on it. We just try to do the fairest thing possible. And if it pisses someone off, that's life.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's reasonable. If your guides are shooting and they had a realistic opportunity to kill the bird as everybody else did, I don't see an issue with that. Where I would take exception is if the guides weren't shooting and, a bird comes up and they're like, oh, we take them because, we got to have those pictures on the website with our lanyards full of bands. And, they wouldn't say that probably, but that's why they want them. Right. All that kind of stuff. So, I mean, again, it just amazes me. People lose their freaking minds over bands. It's absurd. And, you see guys in the field just going at it over these things. And it never ceases to amaze me. And I'm sure you've got a front row seat to see it probably more than most people, just how crazy people get about those things. And, it's just one of those things that waterfowl hunters, it kind of just drives us nuts because it's super exciting to get one, but man, people do some crazy stuff when those get introduced into the mix.
I think the last time Josh was up here and we killed a band in the early season, and I wouldn't say it was coming down to fisticuffs, but people were saying it's mine. I couldn't figure it out, and Josh is like, if I hear one more damn word about that, I'm throwing it in the lake, and we and we ended up giving it to our cameraman that didn't hold a gun the entire time, so that kind of worked out the way. That's how that happened. But Ben, did you say that you ask your clients if they mind if you shoot or not? And do you have a lot of people say, yeah, I don't want you shooting?
No. Okay. Usually people are like, yeah, let's bang them up. Biggest file we can get, which...
Wait, do you ever have anyone say no?
No, I have had issues in the past where a guide was maybe beating clients up to shoot, which is a no-no with me. It's their hunt. They shoot singles, pairs, triples. My guys are only going to shoot the big flock, or he might, make that last final hope and prayer shot. Gotcha. I've never actually had anyone tell us no to shooting. I've had people ask why we weren't. I've actually had a guy, I wasn't shooting, I was just running notice because he was having a little issue with braking, and he is very smart and knows when I pull up and shoot, he can brake because I don't have my hand on the e-collar. So I was dealing with that issue, and he thought we were going to have a bad hunt because I didn't take my gun. Because he'd been out with me multiple times, multiple years, and I've never not shot with him, And he was riding me until we started shooting birds about it. He thought I put him in, he thought I cornholed him, is what he called it. I thought that was pretty comical, but, in Canada, you can't shoot. It's against the law.
Right.
So it's all about dog work and calling and taking pictures, so that's very fun as well.
I did not know that. Why don't you give a little plug to what you got going up north of the border there?
We will be in Western Saskatchewan. New business, Prairie Limits Outfitters. Really excited about it. Fantastic units that we got licensed for. Lesser specs. All your species of snows, ducks. It's going to be water and field hunting. Brand new lodge. We just purchased a 4,200 square foot metal building, and we're remodeling the whole inside of it. We'll have a pool table, place to play bags, the whole 9 yards. Super pumped for that journey this fall, and we're actually, booking a lot of hunts. It's been a blessing. I've got some great guys that are going to be working for us, some of the same guys that work for me down here in Kansas. So if anyone's interested, we have, 2 different packages that make us unique. One's just your typical fully guided package. And then we're also offering a self-guided package. We provide the equipment. We do the scouting, get permission. We take you in the field, show you where to set up, and give you our opinion on how to set up. You don't have to take it, because it's a self-guided deal, but a lot of guys listen and have us help them, and then we leave and go scout. You do the hunting. And that's more of a bang for your buck because it's longer, more days of hunting for, less price. Lodging and meals is included in that package as well. So if anyone's interested, feel free to get a hold of me or, check out the website.
Sweet. That sounds awesome. Sounds like you guys are doing a lot of great things, and super pumped up to see how that works out for you guys up there, and kind of all the stuff you've got lined up for, the 2018, 2019 season. I guess I'll give you one more question here, and we'll kind of see what Dan's got and let you go on that. But I think one of the biggest things that we wanted to accomplish with this episode is sort of take some of the mystery away from working with a guide and what goes into it, and just kind of help guys deal with that intimidation factor, because I know it's real. I've felt it myself, planning a hunt and going on my first hunt and wanting to do everything right and not wanting to screw up, and kind of the pressure that builds and trying to have a good time and just all that goes into it. So for the guys that are listening to this right now that might be thinking about getting onto their first hunt this fall, or want to plan one or something like that, and maybe you've already touched on the point, but can you just what's the one takeaway you'd want a guy listening to this at home or in the car to take away from the conversation about planning that guided hunt, and sort of what they can do to have a successful hunt? What's one thing that they should kind of take away from today that they can put in their back pocket for the next time they look at a hunt?
I think my best advice would be just to do your research. We live in a time now where you can get online and Google anything. You can find people that have hunted there, and like you said before, there's always going to be someone that has a bad taste in their mouth about an outfitter, because we're dealing with people. We're not always going to be perfect. We have bad hunts too. You don't see that because of, the way social media portrays guides nowadays, but, we have bad hunts just like the rest of everybody. So do your research. Like I said, look at the moon phase. Ask them for references. I never have. This is the first time this year I had a guy ask me for some references of clients that had hunted with me in the past. I've never had that before, which kind of shocks me.
Yeah.
You go to get a new roof on your house, you want to see some references and, talk to another resident that's dealt with this company. It's just like getting a job.
Think about that.
Somebody.
I mean, how much in our life do we make decisions on based on a referral from somebody else? It's like, oh, hey, I need to get my my transmission serviced. Where do you take your vehicle? Or I need someone to clean my carpets. Who does yours? It's like, this isn't any different. I agree with you 1,000,000% that, talking to people that can speak to their experience is super valuable. And I'm shocked that no one's asked you for them, but I'm not, on the other hand, because I could see people asking for it just to see how you would react, and then never following up and actually calling someone to say like, hey, you don't know me, but I'm getting ready to book a hunt with Ben, and I just want to know how your experience was or whatever. That could be awkward, but I think it's definitely valuable. And I would have no doubt that most people would be more than willing to share their experience and just talk a little hunting with a fellow waterfowler for sure.
Yep. 100%.
I don't really, I enjoyed the talk, and, just thinking about when we go on guided hunts and the anxiety, it's definitely worth it. And I think you'll find that most guides are really fun to hang out with. And even before and after the hunt, I think it's something that if you're on the fence about doing, like Ben said, do your research and see what other people are saying about it. But going back to what Josh said, it's not just fun and, hunting, but learning from the guides that do this, for a living. Most of the time I just sit back and watch too. And it's, the calling is amazing, and just the setup, or he's saying, I'm looking for that one to do this, and then I'll start doing this. And, there's just so many different perspectives, and it's almost like an art that you guys have it dialed into, and it's really cool. And, I think everyone needs to go on at least one guided hunt just to see, how operations work. So, I enjoy this conversation and tell people to go all the time. So that's good. I think with that being said, what are we? We're about at hour 10. Josh, I just wanted to mention, we are starting to put together a giveaway for our 100th episode, which should be middle of September. I think the 17th is a Monday if we stay on track here. So for all the listeners out there, definitely stay in touch with us and keep an eye on our Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. I think we're up to like 13 or 14 companies throwing in gear. We have 2 to 3 hunts that will be given away, and this is in
okay, hang on. Let's not give away everything, all right? I mean, let's keep a little bit of secret. Let's just say that Dan is super excited, and rightly so. This is going to be an amazing opportunity for you guys that listen to this show. So hang with us. I'll try to keep Dan under control. We're going to make you sweat it a little bit.
I can't control it.
We promise you, it's going to be worth it. It is truly amazing, and we're super excited and really looking forward to. And before long, we're going to be letting you guys know who the companies are that are supporting us, so you guys can get behind them. Again, we have made a change in our approach to the show, and we've brought a lot of companies into the fold that we've worked with and partnered with, and the support that we've received is incredible. And again, we can't encourage you guys enough. The people that are supporting us are going out of their way to do things that we would have never imagined. So please support them. They're good people. We're partnering with companies and products that we use ourselves, that we trust, and we know that they will do good by you guys as well. That's part of the reason why we got guys like Ben on the show. Quality people that are doing things out there the right way. That's what we're all about, and spreading that information. And before I forget, Ben, please share with our listeners where they can find you, your websites, your social media handles, all that kind of stuff.
So we got Big Kansas Outdoors on Instagram, Facebook, www.bigkansasoutdoors.com. We're actually getting ready to have a new website. The old one's up now, but we're going to have a new one be posted probably within the next month. I'm excited about that. A lot more information is going to be on it, more pictures, videos. And my Canada operation, www.prairielimitOutfitters.com. We also have a Facebook and Instagram page, Prairie Limits Outfitters.
Awesome. And Ben is in the Facebook group. So if you're interested in getting in there and asking questions about booking a hunt, or talking about guiding and all of that kind of stuff, you can find him in there. Just like you can a lot of the folks that support this show. So definitely check that out if you're not a member yet. And I think on that, we're going to wrap this episode up. Definitely, Ben, appreciate your time. And it's exciting to hear all the stuff that you got planned and in the development, and we're looking forward to seeing how this next season comes out for you.
I really appreciate you guys having me on. If you guys ever have any more questions, give me a shout. If anybody that listen and has any questions or wants some advice about booking a hunt, whether it be with me or another outfitter, I'm always up to talk to a new waterfowl hunter. So
awesome. Well, with that, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. All right, that does it for episode 82 of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of information about the waterfowl guiding game, and hopefully it takes a little bit of the mystery out for you. I want to thank this week's sponsors of this episode: Lifetime Decoys, Gunner Kennels, Adrenaline, The Finisher, Big Al Silhouette Decoys, Southern Oak Kennels, and Camp Chef. If you haven't caught up on all the past episodes, you can do so on iTunes. Leave us a 5-star rating review while you're there. And until next week, for Dan, I'm Josh. Take care.